Making headlines tonight. A lot of discussions on whether Seoul and Washington will introduce the U.S.'s missile defense system in the Korean peninsula, where will be the ideal location, and how effective it'll be. How might cash earned from Kaesong industrial complex have reached the North Korean leadership and possibly funded the regime's nuclear and missile development? We take a closer look at South Korea's speculation. And Seoul and Washington hold a joint anti-submarine exercises off South Korea's western coast to boost military readiness against possible North Korean provocation. Another large-scale joint drill set for next month. It's Monday, February 15, 2016. To our viewers in Korea, hello to those around the world. This is News Center. Let's begin this Monday night with more talks over THAAD. That's the U.S. Missile defense system, which has been the focus between South Korea and the U.S. following North Korea's latest provocations. The question now is when the two allies will start formal talks over the deployment, and if it is brought to South Korean soil, where exactly will be the most ideal location? Kim has our top story.
The U.S.'s military efficacy will be considered with priority when talks between South Korea and the U.S. start over the deployment of the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System on South Korean soil. That's according to South Korea's Defense Ministry, which stated Monday that the two allies are working out the details of their THAAD talks.
U.S.'s criteria will be considered a priority when deploying the THAAD system on South Korean soil. This is because the U.S. forces in Korea will be operating the system. The optimal location to counter North Korea's ballistic missiles will be selected.
South Korean military officials say they're reviewing whether to dispatch the THAAD battery in a remote hilly region should they agree to bring the American-made anti-ballistic missile system. This is a measure to deter any concerns that the electromagnetic waves it gives off could affect people's health. It's also been revealed that officials are looking to set up 6 launch pads that'll be positioned at least 400 to 500 meters from the THAAD radar in a fan shape. People will be blocked from coming within 100 meters from the defense battery range by a radar safety fence. But there are other concerns. One is whether an expensive THAAD missile priced at some $9 billion is really needed to shoot down a North Korean missile that costs 1/10 of the price. Also, can the THAAD system effectively counter Pyongyang's broad range of ballistic missiles? North Korea is estimated to have around 2,000 in its arsenal, while in comparison, one THAAD battery is only capable of firing 48 missiles. Overcoming China's resistance is another issue, and it's likely to be discussed during vice ministerial talks between Seoul and Beijing on Tuesday. When the joint South Korea-U.S. working group convenes to work out the details of the THAAD deployment, the most contentious issues will be the optimal location and the cost each ally will have to shoulder. Kim, Arirang News.
So we've been hearing what South Korean and American military and government officials have to say about THAAD in Korean soil. On one hand, it's a system that could better protect South Korea from North Korea's nuclear and missile threats. But there are voices of concerns and oppositions in and out of the country. Our Oh Soo-young finds out where the people stand on the deployment decision.
It appears most South Koreans are in favor of placing THAAD, the U.S. ballistic missile defense system, in the country.
I think it's important. It will help deter North Korea's nuclear ambition. And as for relations with China, Korea will gain leverage in terms of geopolitics.
In terms of national defense, I think it's a good idea to adopt the system.
While I do feel THAAD is needed, various factors should be considered, like the financial burden it can create and the fact that Pyongyang is always changing its attitude.
Of course, I agree. I heard that China is against the deployment because it can affect their national security. But for South Korea's own security, the system is needed.
A survey conducted by Seoul-based Yonhap news agency and Korea Broadcasting System found more than 2/3 of South Korean adults support the deployment.
and the majority support holds true regardless of their political orientation. Over 82% of ruling party supporters are in favour of the deployment. For the People's Party, it was 64% and 53% for the main opposition, the Minju Party. By age, the level of support is polarised. The younger generation and those 50 or over largely favour the deployment, while people in their 40s are more divided on the matter. Seoul and Washington are due to begin talks on THAAD deployment this week, in response to North Korea's latest long-range missile launch. On inter-Korean relations as a whole, the survey found South Koreans are split between taking a hard and soft-line approach to Pyongyang. Those in favour of a tougher approach want stronger sanctions and would consider military solutions to dismantle North Korea's nuclear programme, while 40% prefer to deal with issues through dialogue. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
In the wake of North Korea's nuclear and missile threats, some are voicing the need for South Korea to nuclear arm itself once again, this time at the nation's parliament. The floor leader of the ruling Saenuri Party is calling for the move to better prepare this country against possible North Korea provocations. Our parliamentary correspondent Shin Se-min has this report.
The first ever address to the assembly was a memorable one, as the ruling Saenuri Party's floor leader pressed the need for South Korea's own nuclear program. Speaking before the assembly, the ruling camp's floor leader Won Yu-chol pointed the finger at North Korea for the security crisis on Korean Peninsula, saying it is about time the South builds up a safety breakwater composed of peaceful security weapons. One added that Seoul should re-examine its own nuclear armament or rearrange U.S. tactical nuclear weapons to boost the nation's self-defense.
We cannot borrow an umbrella from a neighbor every time it rains. We need to have a raincoat and wear it ourselves.
Referring to the nuclear umbrella Washington has provided since pulling its tactical nuclear weapons from the South back in 1991, one reiterated that denuclearization efforts should be considered meaningless now. One's remarks are resonating with some conservative South Koreans as they wish to set up Seoul's own nuclear program in response to Pyongyang's continued provocations, a fourth nuclear test, and recent long-range missile launch. Following the address to the assembly, the ruling camp chairman Kim Moo-sung was adamant that one's personal opinion did not reflect the party's stance on the issue of South Korea developing its own nuclear armament. Floor leaders addressing the parliament isn't an unusual scene, but this time around more attention is being paid as it follows the recent provocations by the North, raising anticipation as to what the main opposition party's floor leader will address a day after President Park Geun-hye's speech to the parliament on Tuesday. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
South Korea says it has evidence and analyses that show how North Korea has been using money earned at the joint Kaesong industrial complex. But the government is facing criticism as it doesn't seem to be very clear about evidence regarding that issue. And according to some testimony, however, the actual wages paid to workers was just a fraction of what they were supposed to earn. Our Kwon So-ah has this report.
6,000 North Korean won, or a little less than $48. That's what North Korean workers at the joint Kaesong industrial complex earned, not for a day, but a month. This according to a North Korean defector Monday, who used to be a high-ranking official in the light industry sector. The 64-year-old said the regime took all of the around $80 South Korean companies would pay North Korean workers and distributed the equivalent of a bit more than 1 kilogram of rice. This latest testimony appears to be another piece of evidence supporting Seoul's recent announcement that North Korea has been using around 70% of its money from the currently shut down inter-Korean Kaesong industrial complex for their nuclear and missile programs. The Unification Ministry said Monday the government has been tracking and analyzing this through various channels. But so far, it has not chosen to elaborate further on the issue, which is stirring criticism from the media, public, as well as the political arena. In fact, at a National Assembly meeting Monday, Unification Minister Hong Yong-pyo had been harshly criticized by lawmakers for not disclosing proof of Pyongyang's money trail, citing security issues.
Do you have evidence or not?
We are assessing that through various channels.
You mean you have information on the evidence that 70% of the money goes into the Workers' Party of North Korea, but you have no further evidence? That's what you should make clear.
Minister Hong's vague answer is believed to be in part to the delicate issue at hand. The North's mishandling of the money would go against UN security resolutions, which the South would then have been hiding. Meanwhile, along with South Korea's suspension of the complex, the government is deliberating more independent sanctions on the North regarding ships coming in and out of North Korea. Seoul's Unification Ministry says, however, that this would only be considered after the UN Security Council's new resolution is adopted. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
South Korean Unification Minister's announcement that there is reason to believe that 70% of the U.S. dollars paid as wages and fees for the suspended Kaesong industrial project, run jointly with North Korea, of course, had been diverted for Pyongyang's weapons program and luxury goods for its leader Kim Jong-un, has reignited scrutiny over the North's state of affairs in terms of cash flow and into Kim's pocket. Our political correspondent Ji Myung-gil is live in the studio with me. Myung-gil, so cash paid in U.S. dollars for North Korean workers. Now, there are believed to have been sent to North Korea's Workers' Party Office 39. So explain to us how this entire process works. What is Office 39?
Well, Keun-young, you're right. It's believed that some 70% of the money that flows into the Kaesong industrial complex has been funneled to support the ruling Workers' Party of Korea. There are two main organizations that handle this. If we take a look, one is Room 39, which is the code name for a highly secretive bureau that manages leader Kim Jong-un's personal coffers and slush funds. It's estimated to bring in anywhere between $500 million to $1 billion annually, and is linked to illegal activities like the production of counterfeit bills, international insurance fraud, and drugs. The other organization is a ruling Workers' Party Secretariat, headed by Kim Jong-un's younger sister, Kim Yo-jong. She practically runs both Room 39 and the top secretariat, and is likely the only person trusted to do so.
What the South Korean government has said is that there is also reason to believe or speculate that these two organizations are involved with the funding of state-run projects. And the concern is here because those include development of nuclear weapons and missile development in North Korea. And how do we know that these two organizations are involved in that process?
Yes, that's true, Keun-young. North Korean experts believe that covertly they're responsible for weapons developing and also other projects that glorify Kim's regime. That also means buying extravagant gifts for Kim's ardent supporters.
Room 39 runs the regime's state coffers. All important budgets are allocated from there. It's obvious that money from Kaesong's controlled by this bureau and also funds the development of nukes and missiles.
Every month before payday, millions of dollars in cold, hard cash were delivered by van from South Korea to the Uri Bank branch that was located in the industrial complex in the north. South Korean Kaesong firms would then withdraw the money from the bank and deliver it to the North Development Bureau, which oversees the complex.
Well, Myung-gil, another factor that we're wondering about is Seoul's Unification Ministry's announcement that the wages for North Korea's workers for Kaesong industrial complex were actually paid to the North authorities and not directly to the workers. I mean, why is that the case?
Well, North Korea is a communist state that manages every aspect of the ordinary citizens' lives. So therefore, the regime would instead issue special checks for workers every month, possibly enough to cover everyday necessities.
North Korea is a communist state, so individual salaries must first be transferred to the state's bureau account. As workers' salaries have increased every year, the regime's profits have also definitely increased.
Since 2004, there have been 5% salary hikes every year for North Korean Kaesong workers. Until now, a total of $505 million are presumed to have been funneled into the regime's top office, with some $330 million of that used to fund nukes and missiles.
Right, and what South Korea's unification minister has said that is a highly likely speculation, a highly likely scenario, and there is good reason to believe so. All right, Myung-gil, thank you so much for that analysis.
Sure.
Now, the South Korean government has rolled out a list of measures to help support businesses suffering from financial difficulty because of the government's decision to pull all operations out of the joint Kaesong industrial complex. Our Kim Ji-yeon gives us the details of this plan.
Based on their two-day inspection of more than 120 Kaesong businesses last week, the South Korean government announced its plan to save the firms from taking on major damages. Spearheaded by Lee Seok-jun, the head of the Office for Government Policy Coordination under the Prime Minister's office, the measures include shortening the period these affected businesses would normally wait to receive insurance payouts from the Fund for the Cooperation between South and North Korea. It'll take 1 month compared to 3 months. It also plans to provide labor and space so that the businesses can continue to produce and supply their goods. Support will also go into increasing the company's quota for foreign workers and lowering the wage requirement for employing elderly interns to the minimum $5 per hour from the previous $5.50 per hour. The government says it also aims to help South Koreans that lost their jobs at the Kaesong industrial complex find new work through the Labor Ministry's employment centers nationwide. These firms will be able to take advantage of non-operating plants allotted by the Korea Industrial Complex Corporation and get easier access to state-run inventory at low cost. Additional points will be given to the entities for a year if they apply for procuring goods for the government. They will also be waived from repaying interest on their loan for a year and be exempt from various commission fees, including those for foreign exchange and transfers. The government says it will request the country's major business organizations, including the Federation of Korean Industries, to extend deadlines for goods delivery and not walk out on contracts due to their pullout from the Kaesong industrial complex. The government says it will conduct one-on-one meetings with each of the affected business entities to explain the various benefits they'll be entitled to, as well as hear out their concerns and difficulties in order to further improve aid measures. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
In a largely unusual move, President Park Geun-hye will take the floor at the nation's parliament tomorrow morning to address the nation's lawmakers. What will she talk about? Our Song Ji-sun has this report.
안보와 경제는 국가를 지탱하는 두 축인데 지금 우리는 이 두 가지가 동시에 위기를 맞는 비상 상황에 직면해 있는 것입니다.
South Korea is facing a diverse series of challenges. On the security front, Seoul has to deal with an aggressive North Korea, which conducted 2 major provocations in the space of a month. In terms of economic challenges, South Korea is in a period of slowing growth and uncertainty. These issues will likely make up the core of President Park's message to the National Assembly on Tuesday. Since taking office, President Park has visited Parliament every year for the fiscal budget, but this is the first time she's paying a visit for a different occasion. Under Korea's constitution, the president can request to make a verbal or written statement at the assembly. On Tuesday, national unity will likely be the buzz phrase.
President Park will stress the importance of national unity to prevent further provocations from the north and to ease the concerns of the people. She will also emphasize the responsibility of lawmakers during difficult times like this. The president will call on them to promptly pass pending bills on labor reforms, anti-terrorism, and North Korean human rights.
Her message has been consistent, calling on lawmakers to put the people's well-being before their party's interests.
우리 국가와 국민들의 지금 가장 시급한 것은 국회와 정치권이 국민들과 국가의 안위를 위해 모든 정쟁을 내려놓고 테러 방지법을 긴급 의제로 국회를 개회해서 통과시켜야 할 것입니다. 그렇지 않으면 국제사회의 경고에도 불구하고 무리한 도발 행위를 하는 예측 불가능한 북한에 우리 국민들의 생명과 안위를 내놓는 것이나 다름없게 될 것입니다.
President Park will likely sit down with leaders of rival parties to ask for their joint cooperation and also seek public support for her recent decisions made to increase national security, like reviewing deployment of a U.S. THAAD missile system and holding operations at Kaesong Industrial Complex. 송지선, Arirang News.
South Korea's police chief confirmed that North Korea was behind last month's cyber attack that flooded South Korea's public organizations with malicious spam emails. This is the latest in a long list of suspected cyber attacks by the North, although that regime has always denied any kind of involvement. Kwon Jang-ho files this report.
A police investigation has concluded that January's spam email attack on South Korea's public organizations was committed by a North Korean hacking team. The Commissioner General of the National Police Agency said on Monday that the hackers sent these emails pretending to be from the Presidential Office or the Foreign Ministry. The subject of the email was North Korea's recent nuclear test. The wording and grammar of the writing suggested North Korean origin, and police said the IP address of the emails were traced back to Liaoning, an area in northeast China that borders with North Korea, close enough that the North can connect to it wirelessly. It was also the same address linked to a previous cyber attack in 2014 on a South Korean nuclear power plant. Over 750 email accounts have been hit since last June, and most of the account holders have been found to have occupations related to North Korean issues. The Commissioner General said it showed a deliberate targeting process that cannot be deemed as a coincidence. He also gave assurances that there had been no damage to national security from this latest attack. But vigilance remains high. On Sunday, the South Korean government raised a cyber attack alert system called Infocom to level 3 out of 5, saying further attacks were a possibility. Kwon Jang-ho, Arirang News.
South Korea and the U.S. are holding a 3-day joint anti-submarine exercises in waters off South Korea's western coast to strengthen military readiness in case of a North Korea provocation. South Korea's Kim Jong-un submarine and the U.S.'s nuclear-powered USS North Carolina are taking part in the drill to detect, distinguish, and trace North Korea's submarines. Now, this is the second time Washington has deployed a strategic asset to South Korea. The U.S. dispatched a B-52 bomber to South Korea 4 days after North Korea conducted its nuclear test last month. And the U.S. is also planning to dispatch the USS Jonguns Stennis Strike Group to the annual Key Resolve and Full Eagle joint military exercises set to kick off early next month. Now, Cobra Gold, the largest multinational military exercises in Asia, is currently taking place in Thailand. The South Korean military is among those taking part, and our defense correspondent Kim Jong-un is there and files us this report.
Special Forces speedboats are rushing full speed toward the target island. Reconnaissance personnel from South Korea, the U.S., and Thailand are ready to take out anything that gets in their way. Their mission is to secure an enemy island. Once on land, they scramble into battle formation and move on to enemy territory to secure the premises. This is all part of the Cobra Gold exercise that is being held in the southern part of Thailand. The Joint Recon team goes through a number of intensive field training drills, including ways to survive in a tropical jungle.
The purpose of this training is to build camaraderie amongst the allied nations, to share standard operating procedures amongst the reconnaissance units. So far, we have covered basic patrolling, amphibious landings, and shooting.
South Korea is one of 27 nations taking part in the largest multinational military exercise in Asia.
Our Navy and Marine forces were able to test our combat readiness during the Cobra Gold exercise. We were also able to enhance our amphibious landing abilities.
The Cobra Gold exercise runs through February 19th. Kim Jong-un, Arirang News, Ratawi, Thailand.
It was a good start to the week for most markets across Asia, with the shares rebounding, led by major gains in Japan. Experts say the upward trend may continue, though only temporarily, as concerns continue to linger over slow global growth. Our Kim Jong-un has a breakdown on how markets fared today.
Most markets in Asia climbed during Monday's trade, bouncing back from last week's market rout. In Korea, the benchmark Kospi closed higher on Monday, adding almost 1.5%, while the tech-heavy Kosdaq also gained over 2%. This comes after both indexes plunged Friday, with the secondary bourse shedding 8% to 1 point, triggering a circuit breaker for the first time in over 4 years. Shares in Japan also rallied, with the Nikkei surging more than 7%, due in part to the dollar strengthening against the yen. It was able to retrace some of the losses it posted last week, despite reports of its GDP falling 1.4% on-year in the fourth quarter. Over in China, the benchmark Shanghai Composite lost about 0.6%, coming off a week-long break for the Lunar New Year holiday. It was better than expected, considering its weak trade figures and various risks that emerged over the extended holiday period, including North Korea's long-range missile launch. The Chinese currency on Monday also hit its highest level so far this year, after a stronger central bank midpoint.
Faltering crude oil prices have been a big risk factor, but a recovery in prices, increasing hopes of an end to the price run, and measures to stabilize the markets from central banks around the world will play a positive factor in stock markets.
But experts say the current rebound is only short-term, since the market volatility that we've been seeing was spurred by concerns over slow global growth, especially in China. They say until these issues are addressed, it's likely market turmoil will return down the line. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
The news of a U.S. Supreme Court justice's death has quickly turned into a heated political debate. Bruce Harrison is live in the studio with me. Bruce, so conservative Justice Antonin Scalia died over the weekend, reportedly of natural causes. He was 79 years old. What kind of an impact does his death have on the presidential election?
Hi, Kanyang. Scalia's death has a huge impact because now it shifts the focus on the Supreme Court into an election issue in this year. President Barack Obama has the constitutional right to appoint a new justice and appears to be prepared to do so. Republicans, though, are calling for him to hold off until after the election over fears of a strong liberal majority on the court.
So what's the Republicans' argument for deferring this appointment? Are there any candidates?
Sure. Well, the main argument is that it's improper for the president to appoint a Supreme Court justice in an election year because of the country's divided at the time, and it's best to wait and hear from the voters. Essentially, the voters elect the president, as Republicans would like, and then that president in turn appoints a justice. Now, even if Obama appoints a justice, the U.S. Senate, which is controlled by the Republicans, has to confirm the appointment. Most of the Republican presidential candidates quickly weighed in on the debate.
I don't trust Barack Obama on the appointment of Supreme Court justices. We cannot afford to have Scalia replaced by someone like the nominees he's put there in the past.
Obama's administration may turn to Sri Srinivasan, a judge on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit. He would be the first Indian American on the court and has impeccable bipartisan credentials. Rejecting Obama's appointee has the potential to backfire on Republicans. The defiance of the president could energize his political base and drive more voters to support Democrats in the presidential primaries and November election. The medical charity Doctors Without Borders says a hospital it was supporting in northern Syria has been hit by airstrikes and at least 8 people are missing. The agency said the hospital was destroyed after being hit by 4 missiles on Monday. The medical charity didn't say who's responsible for the airstrikes, but monitor group Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said it was likely the Russian military. Doctors Without Borders finances the hospital, which has 54 staff and 30 beds. The attack comes shortly after the United States and Russia brokered a ceasefire in Syria that could begin within a week. However, Russia has refused to cease bombing in Islamic State-held territory.
Now, Bruce, another note, a box office smash, The Revenant. It continues to win awards. A sign success looms for lead role Leonardo DiCaprio, and it looks like the British has approved of Leo's performance as well.
Sure, Mr. DiCaprio is definitely the Oscar favorite, Geunhye. And at the British Academy Film Awards, known simply as BAFTA, The Revenant won 5 awards, including Best Film. This is DiCaprio's first win at BAFTA. He took a moment to thank his mother on her birthday.
I didn't grow up in a life of privilege. I grew up in a very rough neighborhood in East Los Angeles, and this woman drove me 3 hours a day to a different school to show me a different opportunity. It's her birthday.
In the film, DiCaprio plays a fur trapper who gets attacked by a bear and is left for dead by his companions during an expedition in the 1820s.
A very, very long film, but worth watching it. So BAFTA, it's known as a barometer for the Academy Awards. So can we expect some more awards for Leo?
Lately, it's been more of a barometer, yes, over the last several years. And I think 6 out of the last 7 years, the top prize winner at BAFTA has gone on to win the top prize at the Academy Award. So it's definitely possible.
Well, we will keep our fingers crossed for Leonardo DiCaprio.
All right.
Thank you, Bruce, for that, and we'll see you tomorrow.
My pleasure.
You know, you can never leave your guards down because just when you thought spring was right around the corner, another wave of bitter cold sweeps in. For more on the latest weather updates, here's Lee Ji-han. Ji-han.
Hello, Geunhye. But remember how warm it was last Saturday? I mean, despite the rain, the high in Seoul rose to 15 degrees Celsius, whereas today's top high was only minus 2.3 degrees.
See, I knew it was too good to be true.
Right.
And I hope this cold snap won't last too long, but I hear we even have snow in the forecast for tomorrow.
That is right. Western parts of the nation will see snow. In fact, even right now, Gwangju and Jeollado regions, as well as the metropolitan areas, are getting a mix of rain and snow will get up to 5 centimeters, whereas Seoul will also see snow flurries till tomorrow afternoon. And it really felt like midwinter today. The low kicked off at minus 10 degrees Celsius and again only made it to minus 2.3. But we're expecting a slight rise in temperatures tomorrow with a top-notch topping out at 2, but still below the seasonal averages. And also, we are going to start with the day with a very cold morning with a daily low kicking off at minus 6 degrees Celsius here in Seoul, minus 4 for Daegu, and minus 2 over in Busan. And as for the daily highs, Seoul will rise to 2 degrees, 5 for Daegu, and Busan will top out at 7. Now, it seems like we'll have to wait till Wednesday afternoon to see things return to seasonal norms. So until then, be sure to dress warmly. Now, that's Korea for you, and here's a look at the weather conditions around the world.
And that is our broadcast on this Monday night. I'm Moon Geunhye. Thank you for watching. We hope to see you right back here, same time tomorrow on NEWSCENTER.